context remains the same, which is that yesterday Russia engaged in a very significant, the largest ever missile strike campaign against Ukrainian population centers and infrastructure. And as a consequence of that, you have this kind of incident happening. So I think it's important not to forget the context, to understand that even if it's just an incident, I think the context is one of Russian escalation. And to that, we have to continue responding. Well, I think the facts still need to be properly established, but increasingly things are pointing towards an incident whereby potentially a Ukrainian missile or rocket, which was probably seeking to deny a Russian rocket or missile, was kind of misfired or had the trajectory change and hit the Polish territory. However, again, the forensics are still to be properly established, but it seems that it's pointing in that direction.
I mean, I suppose in that sense, we can sort of breathe a sigh of relief. Just explain to people what the reason that Poland's NATO membership raised serious concerns yesterday afternoon, that what this might have meant.
Well, I think there were three scenarios here. One was an intended Russian strike on Polish territory. This would have been a very serious situation, almost immediately triggering Article 5, meaning Poland sitting with the other NATO members and calling for a military response. However, it seems this option is kind of been dismissed quite early on and is very unlikely right now. Second scenario is basically a Russian misfiring or Russian missile rocket that would have been partly hit by some Ukrainian air defense system and as a consequence would have been diverted and hit the Polish territory. This was what we were looking at yesterday evening, and I think was ground for Poland to invoke Article 4 of the Washington Treaty, which means a political consultation with the other allies. And then finally, the scenario which is now being contemplated, but again, it needs to be ascertained by facts, of a Ukrainian air defense missiles or rockets, which will have been misfired and will have hit the Polish territory. However, the context remains the same, which is that yesterday Russia engaged in a very significant, the largest ever missile strike campaign against Ukrainian population centers and infrastructure. And as a consequence of that, you have this kind of incident happening. So I think it's important not to forget the context, to understand that even if it's just an incident, I think the context is one of Russian escalation. And to that, we have to continue responding.
And just finally, I suppose that's the key thing, isn't it? Is that if this is what it appears to be, we move on, and actually the focus seems to very much remain amongst the G19, if you like, in Bali. The focus has to remain on ending this conflict, and that means Russia ending this conflict because they started it.
Exactly, but ending this conflict not at the price of Ukrainian integrity, dignity. So I think ending this conflict on terms that actually are favorable to Ukraine, and that might require still to actually continue pushing on the military front so that the Ukrainians can have a strong position enough to negotiate a fair and just peace.